Hello, we're back today with slow stitching for day 7. Slow stitching is also one of those terms that you may see mentioned in magazines and blogs and Pinterest posts, and it really ties in with mindfulness. It is, again, stitching not because you have the skill or the aptitude, but purely for the joy of doing it and for that time that you are focusing your mind. Specifically for me, I've got very, very little skill. Miss Heeman from Huishoudkunde will attest to that. But my mind needs to focus so much to get the simplest stitch and things right that I totally zone out when I do slow stitching. So I'm going to show you something that I did a while ago. Do you see the stitches? They're all messy, they're all over the place, they're almost naive. So if you are more skillful, your slow stitching may look better, but it is just stitching through fabric. If you can embroider, you can probably do embroidery knots and things, but it's not following a pattern, it's not following a color scheme, it's not following rules, it is just stitching. So that is a nice way to get rid of scraps, little bits of lace, things that may be sentimental. Piece, your favorite shirt that tore a little end of it. You can also slow stitch. That's the application for journaling. Stitch through paper like I did here. So, and again, it adds a layer and some texture on journaling items. So I think for me, for today, for slow stitching, finally this little bird that I insist on using and that I just can't quite find a spot for, I think he'll be slow stitched into something today. So for slow stitching, you need a needle and a thread and some fabrics, basically. And then I see when lots of examples of slow stitching on Pinterest and websites. Colored thread shows up very nicely, so, and different textures. And then I think I'm going to try adding some beads in the stitching. And then I've written the name down because otherwise I won't remember it. Mark Lipinski was the guy, or Lipinski was the guy who started the movement and the term slow stitching. For today, if you don't want to do a slow stitching page, now's a good time to maybe go through a journal and say, oh, that would have done nicely with a string of stitches or something like that. So to slow stitch over items or pages that you have done. The term that goes hand in hand with slow stitching is visible mending. It's also for saving the environment and things, and saving landfill, clothes going to landfill, is to mend your items visibly, rather than throw them away if you don't have the skills. So while you may end up, I've seen it used very effectively on journal covers, for example. Again, this is one of those things that doesn't necessarily have a purpose apart from the act of doing it. I am obsessed with fabric. I find it very difficult to throw anything away. So all the bits that I have lying around, I don't know how I'm going to stitch it yet, but that's the beauty of slow stitching. Just start. I also like stamping on fabric. You don't need a special ink because you're not washing the item, you're not wearing it, you're not eating off of it. It goes in a book. So offcuts, calico and things. I don't know if this is too elaborate even for slow stitching, but I'm going for it. Okay, wish me luck. Here I go. I'm going to start with some, I think I'm going to do some green thread because there's some green, and this is just scraps. If you are a purist, I'm assuming this is not going to appeal to you, but try and embrace the imperfection and try and adapt the method to something that does appeal to you, because to me this is taking every ounce of concentration that I have to stitch and talk at the same time. I'm going to add some thread that's the wrong color because I've got a little thread card lying around, and I mean that's not a lot of thread and then it's gone. That's also just use what you have. I'm not even sure if I'm doing this right, but I like it and I like layering the stuff, so it's another form of paper collage for me. This is also quite a portable mindfulness activity because you don't need a lot of things to do. It's quite contained, so if you know you're going to be in a waiting room or something, rather than play on your phone, do a little slow stitching page for your journal. I'm going to glue some of the items and then stitch afterwards because for me it's just easier. If you are a good stitcher, then you don't need to do that. When I did the theme journal video, the first video, remember we had the pocket? That would have been very good, just lines stitched across. And then that could have been a pocket, like a real pocket. So that's also just existing fabrics, just lines stitched across. Is it a running stitch? Is that what it's called? I got a whole lot of these beads in a swap, and they're not my normal choice, but I think the little wooden beads would actually look, they are out of my comfort zone in terms of colour. So there we go, I'm just adding small stitches, and then I'm also trying to get the thread going to another element, the same as how when I glue it I overlap elements. If you are an expert, this will look like nothing to you, but I still need to stitch all of that. I mean, this has immersed me completely and kept me quiet and kept me focused. So that is the purpose of slow stitching, not necessarily how it looks, but how it makes you feel. So I'm treating it exactly like I would a paper collage or an embellishment or something, repeating colors and things, but I'm trying to use what I have. So I'll just continue, and this will just be in my journal as nothing but a pause, or it can even be a big pocket, it can be on the cover. It's just the act of sitting still, focusing and creating in a different medium. Tomorrow is day 8. Let me pull my list. We're doing a bit of bling. You may have seen in my pages. Every now and again I've sneaked in just a little bit. It is my weakness, my kryptonite. I can't do without my bling. So we will be discussing heat embossing, gold leafing, mica flakes, sequins, glitter, anything like that. Just to add a bit of Christmas cheer to the journal, because the farmhouse rustic theme does not lend itself to a lot of bling. Bye-bye.